Hey guys, it's Ethan back again. Got a little update for you guys. Hopefully by the title of this video you can tell what has changed, but recently I went ahead and actually swapped out some the Yamaha R1 throttles for some Honda CBR throttles, CBR1000s, and I'll get into why I did that. Got another whole breakdown with all the parts and whatnot, and show you what the benefits are, what what I want to do with it, and why, pretty much why I swapped, and what the intentions are. So let's get into I'll just get into the car setup, break that down real quick. But so just like the R1 setup, we have the motorcycle throttle bodies for a CBR this time. A little different orientation. TPS is on this side and throttle cable's in the middle, but essentially does the same thing. And there's a couple benefits that I'll show you off the car. But I guess what I have here is an adapting plate that will use the stock CBR pattern on, obviously this side, and then this side these velocity stacks can bolt onto. These velocity stacks are just a standard billet velocity stack meant for a 4AGE Toyota engine. So one of the things I wanted to do with this new setup was incorporate a more widespread and popular and available velocity stack. As you have seen in my older video, the velocity stacks were 3D printed and custom, and with the possible intentions of selling it, I didn't want to have to make all those or just offer maybe a subpar velocity stack. So I just went ahead and made these adapting plates, so you could literally find any accommodating 4AGE velocity stack you want, and with some slight modification make them fit. The slight modification needed was I had to file some of these edges to make sure they'd have enough spacing to actually bolt correctly. I would have had to do it more on the R1 setup, which I'll show in a second, but not as much, and that also offers some benefits and whatnot. As far as the throttle position sensor goes, it's the same setup. I'm just using the stock Honda plug, and then it has 3 wires, and you just tap that into the Miata's 3 wires. Pretty simple stuff, works like a charm. And then I have another 3D printed manifold. It's very hard to see, but maybe you could see it. It's right there. I don't think you can see that, but I'll show you off the car a little prototype of it. And then instead of bolting it to the throttles, I went ahead and did the silicone coupler method, with the hose clamps. And I wasn't the biggest fan to start with of them. That's why I had done that bolt-on solution. But as some design ideas were brought up, and dealing with these new Honda throttles, I kind of was forced to make the decision. And it's holding up fine, nothing too crazy. And then lastly on the car, this throttle cable, which I like the way it's set up over the previous R1 setup. Requires less modification, which is always nice. And with the again, with the possible intention of selling this, I don't want it to be to require that much modification for someone to put on. So it uses just some aluminum as a bracket, bolts to the stock bracket location actually of a CBR, and then the Miata cable goes through it. And then due to the way they're oriented, I had to make this little bearing pulley system, so it it goes around this way and then tucks back in this way, so it can pull kind of in that motion. And that's kind of the way I had to do it, and it's not a bad way. I have a bearing, so no friction really. And then it's got a groove in it, if you can see it. Yeah, so it's got a groove in it, so it rides pretty well in there. And this system's always under tension. Even at like idle, it's, you know, just a little bit tensioned. So it really never can fall out, in a sense. Because I know it's probably what a couple people, you know, raise their eyebrows at. But yeah, so let's get into the actual, you know, parts and whatnot. So this is the old R1 setup. I'm just gonna start breaking this down so I can show you what the benefits with the CBR was. This is the CBR manifold that it's just a prototype, but I made it, you know, just out of PLA, and it's slightly different, as you can see. Some of the changes I made versus with the R1 or with the CBR versus the R1, I could have made to the CBR already, or the R1 already, but it also offered some additional benefits that I just couldn't, you know, incorporate into them. So let's start with just the way the R1 setup is. And so you can see I have, you know, this manifold, which, by the way, after about a year still holds up, you know, plenty strong. It's super solid, you know, almost half-inch thick right here. So it's held up, you know, all it needed to, and it's done its job. And we can see that it, you know, it comes from the Miata port. Slight angle on these edges, slight angle on this one, and then you bolt these boots onto it. No big deal, you know, just kind of does what it does, and provides an easy mounting solution. And then, you know, we have the throttles themselves. The throttle cable implementation, in comparison to the CBR, is a little more intensive. What I had to do was weld the Miata wheel to the keyed Yamaha little part that they have for the throttle to be able to actuate it and whatnot. And, you know, it works well. It works really good. But the issue is, you know, I don't want to be, if I'm thinking about making these, I don't really want to be welding that many, or even cutting a piece like this is very hard. You can see it's two separate pieces. They spot welded it, and, you know, it's just something I don't want to have to deal with if I don't have to. Another thing about these throttles is they have a motor in them, or a casing in them, and, you know, the motor's taken out for my application, but it adds a little bit of bulkiness, adds weight, and it's one more thing that it doesn't need. That comes standard on these CBR. You know, there's really no motor, nothing. They're just straight, save space, you know, do a lot of things like that. So yeah, that was another benefit, just a nice thing to have, you know. Another big thing was the port spacing. Now I'll take the new adapter into place. The port spacing, it's kind of hard to see, but if you look over it, let me see. If you look over it, you can see about a half-inch on each side. Each of these runners, about a half-inch spaced accordingly away from their other respective ports. And that was nice. You know, obviously I didn't have to have as sharp of an angle, and I was able to fit a bigger velocity stack, you know, here. So this gap is pretty small. I would have had to take a bigger chunk out of my current velocity stacks for that to work. But having these CBR ones, it was just nicer, you know, flow-wise, it's a little better, and just, you know, the whole point of this new kit is to just button everything up to where it looks like pretty much a run-of-the-mill ITB setup. It just is cheaper. These plates actually will end up being CNC machined out of 6061 aluminum, likely. So pretty much the same material as these velocity stacks. And, you know, there's going to be pretty much no more, with the exception of one part, no more 3D printed parts, which is nice. I mean, although this manifold met the expectations, and it was, you know, plenty well within the range, temperature and load-wise, it's just nice to have, you know, a metal part. And to be honest, if I'm going to sell it, it already gives a better reputation for the part. So that was something it was kind of my goal. And so even, you know, you're probably wondering, well, you still have this 3D printed, and you're right, it's on the car, but it's just a prototype. I do plan to cast this out of aluminum, and it shouldn't be too crazy. It's not gonna, if I do end up selling it, it's not gonna be a drastic increase in price, because if I can cast this well enough and get it, just get it produced and like I'm thinking I should, it should be roughly the same cost material-wise to actually make versus this 3D printed part. So, you're just going to have cast aluminum, which is a lot nicer. And one of the nicer things about this manifold, because I had thought about casting, obviously the R1 setup, was the elimination of this flange, because I could use those silicone hoses, was made it a lot easier to be able to design a casting for this. If you are familiar with casting, you know that obviously it has to be separated along a parting line, and having those two opposing flanges right there opposing an angle makes it significantly harder to design a split mold than this part does. So I will be investigating that, and I'm already designing molds and whatnot for it, with hopeful plans to get a real part made soon. But that was one of the nicer things as well. Pretty much, the biggest thing that got my attention for the CBR kit versus this R1 kit was, if you remember from my last video, I stated that these were 2007 to 2008 Yamaha R1 throttle bodies. You could only use those according, if you had this setup. There are other setups, but this was the most ideal for putting on a car. Obviously, it's not crazy ideal already, but if you had to do it, 07 to 08 for Yamaha R1s. What I had seen with the Honda ones was that I was able to use 2008 all the way up until 2016 throttles. Now that is obviously way nicer because you can find more of them. They're not that necessarily that much cheaper, but they are still relatively affordable compared to the R1 setup. I picked up these guys for $45, and I picked up the Honda ones for $45 as well. So they're pretty much the same price. But obviously you're looking at, if I'm gonna sell a kit, it's people are gonna be buying these off eBay or whatnot. And if you're only looking for 2 model years, it's gonna be, it'll be easy at first, but as maybe a couple more sell, it'll be kind of hard, and it'll get harder. And using a production model year or 2 production model years rather than 8 is obviously not as good for just having the ability to piece them together. So that was the biggest part. It caught my eye, and I was almost ready to just go through with this R1 setup. I was gonna have these flanges cut, these welded tubes, because casting was too hard. I wanted to, but it was just I couldn't. Too many accommodations. So I was getting ready to actually make this adapter out of metal, start fabricating a couple, getting some other parts in check, and then selling it as a kit. I was almost ready to do that, and then I saw the CBR ones, and I said, well, if I make this R1 kit, it's not going to be good, because I'm going to know that there's a better setup out there, and I didn't do it. And, obviously that's not what you guys want. If you were to buy something, you don't want something that is less than ideal for what it is. You want the best, the best built, best purposeful one. So yeah, those are the nice benefits I had over those. If we take just a quick look at the old R1 velocity stack setup, you can see not very reproducible. I mean, it is on a 3D printer, but 3D printing does not take like a couple minutes. It takes a couple hours. You have to cut your base plate and buy some bolts and all that stuff. So it's a more intensive process for sure. And overall, doesn't look as nice. And as a kit, you just wouldn't want it. If you had the option to get something like that, I would take that any day of the week. There's our old filter, and you know, it worked well, did its job well. Pretty much only robbed about 1 to 2 horsepower on the car, which is perfect. There are other filter setups for ITBs that can take a decent amount, like 10 horsepower or so, and that's not what you want, you know, when obviously, because you're getting probably 10 to 20, maybe 25 on an ITB bolt-on kit horsepower increase, and when you put a filter on it, it almost like takes that away. So let's see here, what else we got. I will be putting a filter on this one. The nice thing about the 4AGE stacks is you can buy so many filter options now. You can run traditional sock filters. You probably almost have to take this all the way down. So that would require a little bit of modification. But you can additionally run those screen filters where they're built into this flange right here. And so you just bolt them in between, and when you look down the throttle, you can see a screen, and that protects it. You can run that if you want. You can run no filter with nice velocity stacks. You know, that's been appealing, but not a permanent thing to use. Or you can go with what I went with, and these pod filters, or these, I don't know, plenum filters, are always really nice because as a filter, you want as much surface area so you don't have to pull a lot of air through a filter. When you pull a lot of air through a filter, you reach that restriction point. And obviously you do not want to have a filter max the airflow out before the engine's airflow input is maxed out. So I bought another pod filter, a little bigger because it had to accommodate the larger velocity stacks, but it's a Piper Cross. I'm sure you've seen one of them or two of them before. Pretty big. But it'll just fit with some minor clearance modification. It will just fit kind of just like that. Now, you know, obviously it'll be flat, but that's how it'll be, and it'll be a perfect filter. You know, tons of area here. So I should pretty much expect to see no more than 1 horsepower decrease from this thing, which is good. That's a little better than this little filter, and it's, again, an off-the-shelf part. The whole point of this and making a kit for it is I want to sell it and make it professional. I don't want to, you know, even though it's going to be cheaper, I don't want to make it look cheaper. I want to make it meet the same quality standards as other kits and whatnot, and I'm sure a lot of people want that as well. Let's see. Oh, so you're probably wondering, well, does this setup make more power? And the answer is yes. I'll tell you in a second. But I just want to do a little comparison with the R1 setup. So the R1 setup was already, you know, pretty good. It had maybe a little bit to be desired, which is why I went to this. And what that was is, if you can see down the port, let me see if I can focus this. It's kind of hard to see, but if you can see down the port, you can see the butterfly, and right about here, I kind of showed you on my R6 manifold, right about here, the port from a Miata port goes into an R1 port, and that's a little smaller than the actual inner diameter of these velocity stacks. These velocity stacks are about 44 millimeters, and so, oh, actually, I'll just show you this way. So you can kind of see, let's see, it's hard to see, but what it does is it goes from that circle, that 44 millimeter ID circle, and it goes into a slightly smaller oval of the R1 right here. Now that's not bad. That was a big step up from the R6 kit if you watch my older video, because this, in comparison to the Miata port, was pretty much literally the exact same size. So there was no restriction, essentially, right there. But, you know, if you want to look at, in a sense, I guess for lack of a better term or phrase, your horsepower potential, the way you increase horsepower in a Miata, in any car, is you increase the airflow. So if we kept the same airflow right here, we would get a little benefit just from having these neck down and increase their velocity and airflow, a little bit of airflow. But you're essentially keeping the same size, and so I was curious as to what sort of effect that had on the car. So I went to these throttles. Now, given I could have done the same thing with the R1s as I did with the CBRs, because the CBRs also have this boot. And if you take this boot off, just like the R1s, it has this irregular circle, this irregularly spaced circle. It's offset from here differently. So this circle is the exit of the ITBs themselves, minus the boot. If you put the boot on, it's going to get a little smaller, just like the R1 ports. But what I wanted to do is eliminate the boot, one, for a little bit of simplicity benefit, but two, to keep that area a little bigger and see what would happen. And so I put this on the dyno, just dynoed it yesterday actually, and what it did was it made 148 wheel horsepower. So I said the last setup made about 145, so it made 3 wheel horsepower more. Now that's not that much, and what happened was I lost a little bit of mid-range torque versus this setup, and that's simply because this smaller hole up here, this necks the air down earlier, and it already does that. And so obviously if you have the same amount of airflow through a smaller orifice, you're going to have a faster velocity. And what faster port velocities do is they fill the chamber up better and more adequately, and they do it in a shorter amount of time. So what happens is in the low RPMs, because things like scavenging isn't as prominent, the high velocity helps to fill that chamber quick. And the more you fill the chamber with air, the more pressure differential, the higher the pressure differential you're going to get in the cylinder. And the higher the pressure you can get in the cylinder, the more torque. And so that's why I lost a little bit of low-end torque, or mid-range, sorry. But I picked up, a considerable amount, 3 to 4 wheel horsepower, in the high range, upper RPM range. And so, for a daily car, it is reasonable to say that, I want a little more mid-range torque. Fairly fine. There's really no problem with that. But also, obviously for a race car, you're going to want something a little more higher revving, higher RPM, higher horsepower friendly in the higher RPMs. So, what this kit represents is kind of the best of both worlds, because what I want to do at the end of the day is, like most people running ITBs, they always want more. You're not gonna stop at just ITBs. You're gonna put, you probably already have a full exhaust, right? And you're gonna put ITBs on it, and then a lot of people put cams in it. They're gonna go put maybe do some head work, porting, compression, bumps, with the head shave and whatnot. You're gonna do additional things, and so what this new CBR setup does is, while it keeps pretty much the same power numbers and a little bit more than the R1s, it provides a higher ceiling for this kit to reach. Now, this kit, now that it has these 44 millimeter ID circles right here instead of the motorcycle ports, this pretty much exactly resembles any 45 millimeter ITB setup you could buy on the market. Obviously they make 50 millimeters, but these CBR ones, forgot to mention, are 45s. So they don't obviously make, I can't take a 45 and make it a 50, but in terms of 45 millimeter throttles, this is pretty much the same setup you could get out of a Genve 45 millimeter, a TWM 45 millimeter, and let's see, there's maybe one more. I can't remember. But yeah, pretty much those 45 millimeter kits that you see, this is gonna resemble it and mirror it almost exactly. And it makes the horsepower to validate that claim. 148 with a stock engine, with a full exhaust, and ITBs is very normal. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've seen the amount of a good amount of dyno pulls from ITB cars and stuff. So you've gotten to familiarize yourself with how much power an ITB car makes with whatever mods, and you can piece together your own predictions and whatnot. So 148, that's pretty much right at the ceiling of what a stock engine can make, and with ITBs. And so that's exactly what I'm looking for. I do have plans personally to build the engine. If I'm gonna sell it, I want to show that it's capable of a little more horsepower than what the stock with bolt-ons makes. So I'm happy with that. And I have big plans, doing a lot of things. I'll keep you guys updated. I'll post a dyno video of it probably within a couple hours of this video. And yeah, there's just a lot of upgrades, more buttoning up, more refinement. Just looks more like an ITB kit, right? That's the whole goal. And I will be soon enough planning on selling these, and roughly I'll be targeting maybe $400 to $500 for a kit that'll essentially get you all the parts you need, all the specialty parts you need. So the adapter, the cast aluminum adapter that I'll be making, that'll be included. The throttle cable bracket, I'll give you one of those. I will give you the velocity plate, stack plate adapters, and let's see, there might be one more thing, but I can't think of it at the moment. But and I might give you the hardware to put it on and whatnot. Probably will. But what that'll do is then after you spend $400 to $500, what you'll have to do is you'll buy the throttles, $50. You'll buy this little TPS plug, which you can find on eBay. It's the same as like a K20 throttle position sensor. That's how I bought mine. I can provide more detail on that. You can buy velocity stacks. Now you can buy these ones, which were $200. You can buy $50 ones. It's kind of like your free game. Then you can buy these silicone couplers and hose clamps, and then you can buy a filter. And so that's a lot for you to buy, which I try to cut down as much as I can. But the more I include in my kit, the more it's going to cost you at the end of the day. So I don't want to include too much, because you can buy those things relatively easily. It requires no modification from you, and at the end of the day, you're buying that, and buying it for what it is versus me modifying or reselling it is going to be cheaper. So that's my whole goal. You'll probably be looking at $800 to $900 depending on what you do. If you run no filter and the cheapest velocity stacks you could find, right? You could be looking at a $600 ITB setup. Not joking. If you run a $200 velocity stack setup and a $150 filter, then you're looking at $900, maybe a little higher than that. But even still, at $900, $1,000, if you're gonna go full out, just buy the nice things, right? Then you're still looking at least maybe $700 in savings versus a full kit for a TWM, a Genve, or what have you. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I guess got a little insight as to what my current plans are. It's been a while since that video came out, so I wanted to give an update. I've been working on this setup for a while. December is when I started this project, or maybe late November, and it's been on the car since pretty much New Year's. So it's been going strong. Only 3 weeks so far, but it's going strong. It makes good power. It's a fun car. It looks better. Just a lot of improvements over the old setup, and I plan on doing something with that soon. sorry for the long video. I tend to make these if when I'm talking, but I want to give you guys as much information as possible and make you feel like there's just a good option out there, and should be coming soon. If you have any comments, questions, let me know. I respond to everything. And yeah, thanks guys for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.